So I have several questions. They're pretty short questions, but probably going to have pretty long answers. I don't know. So was the man in any way connected to your pay, or did he influence your pay in any way?
No. No, the man who was my ultimate boss. There were people above him from Tokyo. They came in once to determine if I was going to have to pay for the damages to the practice room, and they determined that they didn't want me to have a bad experience and go back talking trash about Japan. So I think they made me pay something for it, but it was really minimal.
What damage did you make to the practice space?
Well, I mean, first of all, the walls were not made of, they weren't concrete walls. They were like drywall, so a club can just go right through them. I got kicked out of that other space because one of my practice sessions turned into a martial arts training session with the chairs. I was doing 10 rings and it was very painful. But that's where I couldn't do 10 rings in the practice room. And then they were like, well, why do you need to, you don't do 10 rings in your show, why do you need to practice it? I'm like, well, they won't be in the show if I don't practice it. But I had a ring stuck in the ceiling of the practice room for about a week, and finally someone came in with some makeshift pull, like a tool you'd use for a pool or something. Only he had to fish my ring out from the ceiling.
I wonder if they had to make a special tool for the ring gathering.
Yeah, I think they tasked that guy with that, and then he passive aggressively handed it back to me. And he was like, it was almost like he said, "Don't do it again." But really, now he's equipped to handle it, so why not? But to answer your question, no. He had his being there was, I mean, it's later revealed in the video that his job was to make sure that I had a drop-free performance and I hit 23 minutes. So imagine you're doing your juggling show every night, and every night, there's a guy sitting out there counting your drops. Not just your drops, but what part of your routine, at what time you had the drop at. I mean, very detailed scientific notation. By the end of my whole contract, he probably could have created a chart to show me where most of the drops happened at and at what time I was most likely to drop. So you could probably start placing bets when you watch my show based on that algorithm. Like, who thinks he's going to drop again on 7 rings?
Yeah, maybe he was just trying to figure out the odds.
He was just trying to get out of staying late. But he also gave me a ride home afterwards, so he had to be there anyway. And it was like an hour-long drive. So the same guy that's auditing my whole show, then I have to sit in the car with him. Like, why couldn't we go over all that while we're driving home?
I assumed that was a joke in the video when he said that was literally his job. It's weird because I think he said his job included counting the drops, but also the time. So it's like, you couldn't go shorter either. Or longer or something. You have to be exactly 23 minutes or something.
I think longer would have been better, but yeah, it was supposed to be as close to 23 without going under. So if I'm like 22:59, he's got to come back the next night. His bosses are like, problem, 1 second.
He reported this to his bosses.
Yeah.
I wonder what the hell they did with this information. It's like, if I attached like a person to each one of my reports to count every time they mistyped something, and then like send that to me, I don't know what the fuck I do with that.
What do you do with that information? Well, I mean, maybe he just knows that his job is not done yet. Maybe he doesn't report it every night. Maybe he only reports it when he's accomplished his goal. There he is.
Oh man, that face. I feel like I've seen him before. I feel like he's shown up to me in my nightmares, told me about my drops.
I showed this video to Penn, and he said if there were a god, he would look like this.
Why not dumb your routine down?
Because I was the one that was dumbed down. Back then, most of my juggling career was trying stuff I wasn't ready for on stage and hoping for a miracle. So it's all about, it'd be so cool if I could do this routine, so let's keep trying it until it happens. And I performed so much there, it was inevitable that eventually I would hit a 5 club 5 up 360. And I got it once, And I was like, oh my God, I'm finally good enough to do it. I'm like, no, it happened once. You're not doing it every day. And then it didn't happen again. I'm like, well, what the fuck? So I was very dumbed down from the very beginning up until, the early the early 2000s, I think I just had this. So yeah, that was, once I started doing ships, then I realized, well, your job really relies more on not dropping a lot. So dumb it down. But even now I try stuff that it's harder than it needs to be, but I can do it, but it's not like an easy ride for me. Because I don't want to do anything that anyone else can do easily. I have to still keep it up to, my level of difficulty.
No, I understand that. I guess what I would have expected, if you know that the guy's recording, is that you dumb it down enough to where you can do it well, and then like try to push the boundaries from there. But actually, like the performance that's in the video, it didn't seem like particularly droppy or anything like that.
Well, I only showed you the best performance. Yeah. I recorded every night, but that was the only one I used.
You didn't care that much about that guy's note taking.
I didn't care at all. And in fact, I was so oblivious. I didn't even know why he was doing it. I just thought he's doing it to show me, and I'm like, all right. I mean, I don't recall feeling any pressure from his note taking. Like it just didn't. I didn't care. Because I already had the job, so I'm like, no one said you're going to get fired if you're not going to get fired.
You zoomed into the woman's wagon.
Well, yeah, that was way more interesting than his notes. You could argue that the wall was more interesting than his notes.
Do you think he would have noticed had you cut stuff out? Because he's seen it so many times. Like,
oh, well, yeah. I mean, just the fact that he said 3 crubs, no drop, but ending so-so. Like, he's like, it's not enough to not drop. The ending was so-so. What is that? I don't even remember what the ending was, but it was so-so. So apparently not up to his standards. I should have had him as a judge for the first WJF because he was like way more detailed. Like, why didn't you say 5 balls? You move your feet 50 times. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he caught that fumble, although he called it a drop.
The humble.
The humble fumble. So.
And then, if you pick up on it in the video, he talks about how, you were at 23 minutes, but maybe because of all these drops that added time. So the more
I didn't catch that.
I should say, I factored in the drops so that I could hit your 23 minutes.
What was the venue? Are you calling it some kind of a club? But
it was a disco. They called it a disco. After I was done, people came out and danced where I was performing.
That's where you could have busted out your skills from that Cirque du Soleil stuff that you did later.
I didn't have them at that point. That came later. I trained for that, years later. Thanks for mentioning that. Now I got to dig up that B-roll. And I'll just do it right now.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm actually super surprised that you said it didn't bother you. It would have bothered the hell out of me. Because I mean, whenever I'd be performing, I thought I was the only one counting anything, and there was like another guy doing it. I would have totally dumbed it way down.
I was very hopeful. I was still thinking, one of these days this routine's just going to click, and I'll be able to do it because I had it's those nights where it goes well that gives you the false hope that you're getting better.
Yeah.
It's inevitable eventually. I mean, if you're trying something within your range of ability, it's inevitable that it'll work at some point once.
It's like a whole different level of not caring about what your audience thinks, which I had never reached because it's like whenever I'd be performing, I'd be wondering what they're thinking, and so I wouldn't want to drop, even if I did want to hit a really hard routine. It's like you've reached a level where you were just like, I don't care how this goes. I just want to do this routine.
Well, there had to be some level of caring because it would have been easier if the audience wasn't there. So they did play some sort of influence, but I wanted them to see what I wanted to show them. I didn't want to just do something that would make them happy. I didn't think it would make them happier to see like 8 rings instead of 7 rings. But it was still for me. It was mostly for me, I think, to just feel good about what level I had achieved, whether it was simulated or real.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
Right after that is when I got into cruise ships. Shortly after that, I did a couple of juggling festivals. I think I have the video of it somewhere where I went to York. I think it was the York Juggling Festival. I think that was 1998 in the UK. Yeah.
At that point, there wasn't yet that whole like industry of, being able to make a little bit of money and go into juggling things. Could you not go and do other juggling events like the York thing?
Yeah, but that doesn't really pay anything. That's just more for oh wait. Okay. That was more that was more just for fun, just getting your travel paid to go to a juggling festival or a juggling event. But to actually make a living, but so that's when I got into cruise ships shortly after, within a year after that. No, I think, 98, that's when I started doing ships.
But so when you were doing ships, were you doing kind of similar stuff where you were trying to really like up the ante while still being kind of cheesy?
No, I dumbed it way down. It was still difficult, but
You weren't like doing 10 balls.
I wasn't doing 10 balls. I'm going to upload the promo that I was using from ships in a few days, which you've already seen. So you saw the level of difficulty I was doing.
The one with the knife throwing?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is some difficult juggling in those shows. And when I was training for competitions, like when I was training for the Prim competition, then the 2000 competition, and then even 2002, as I trained more, the difficulty in the show went up because I also used that as an opportunity to practice performing the difficult tricks I was going to compete with. So I kind of worked them in. I was comfortable in that venue, so it was easier for me to do there than in the competition, but still easier, more difficult than in practice.
You did find it easier on ships than in competitions? That's kind of surprising to me. I would have. To me, it's all the same.
Well, no, you could say, well, if you mess up too much on a ship, you lose your job, but I didn't. It was more about if the audience liked you or not.
Yeah.
And but the competitions was more about like you're really conscious about dropping because
was it a part of this guy's job to factor in some kind of audience metrics
didn't seem to be.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you would think that'd be like the number one concern.
It's very like fact driven. What you really should do is have an interview with him. See what he's doing now. I wonder if he's still counting somebody's drops.
The way he was smoking, he's probably dead by now. I'll look him up. How many Hamana-sans could there be in Japan? Was that all your questions?
I think so. I think the prosecution rests.
Well, I have one question for you. When are we going to see a qualifying run of 7 club back crosses and re-enter the pattern for at least 21 catches?
Never for me. Ask Jack Denger.
All right.
That dude is the future. Or maybe Spencer
Androli. Yeah.
Androli, yeah. That guy balls hard.
Well, we've never done this before, so we don't know how to end it. So I will just say, oh!